Thomas Jefferson. Third President of the United States. Author of the Declaration of Independence. One of America's founding fathers. But here's what they won't tell you in history textbooks. This man spent more time documenting vegetables than writing political speeches. 38 years. More than 1,000 pages of garden journals. Records of every planted seed, every harvest, every experiment. Why was one of the most influential people of his time so obsessed with plants? And here's what's really strange. One vegetable he grew openly could have seriously damaged his reputation. Back then people feared this plant more than fire. But Jefferson ate it every day and documented 14 different varieties. No, it's not what you thought. It's much more interesting. Today I'm going to tell you a story that explains why one man's garden changed American cuisine forever. Let's go. Late 1700s. America just won the War of Independence. The country is free. But here's the problem. Most Americans eat like medieval peasants. 5 to 6 types of vegetables. Potatoes, onions, cabbage, carrots, turnips. That's it. Meanwhile Jefferson returns from France and Italy with suitcases stuffed with seeds. And not just seeds, illegal seeds. Back then European countries guarded their best plant varieties like military secrets. Exporting them was unlawful. Jefferson smuggles them in. His Monticello estate in Virginia isn't an ordinary rich man's garden. It's an experimental laboratory. He tests 330 varieties of peas. 26 varieties of lettuce. Dozens of tomatoes, beans, cabbages. He records everything. When planted, how it grew, what the taste was, what went wrong. Why? Why does a wealthy politician who doesn't need to worry about food spend time like an alchemist, only instead of gold he's searching for the perfect pea? The answer to this question explains why his garden is more relevant today than 200 years ago. Jefferson understood one thing we've forgotten today. Whoever controls food controls the country. America won political independence. But in terms of food, it remained dependent on Europe. Best seeds, best varieties, knowledge about cultivation, all this was controlled by European countries. Seeds were power. Jefferson saw the future. He understood. If Americans learn to grow diverse, quality food themselves, they'll become truly independent. Won't need to rely on imports, on whims of European traders, on political games. His garden at Monticello isn't a hobby. It's a manifesto of food sovereignty. Every plant is an act of resistance. Now that you understand his motive, let's look at what exactly he grew. And I warn you, you'll be surprised. Let's start with tomatoes. And yes, I know what's so special. Today tomatoes are everywhere. But in the 1780s everything was different. Back then tomatoes in America were considered dangerous. Seriously dangerous. There was widespread belief that they could seriously poison you. And you know what? People had reasons to think so. Aristocrats in Europe ate tomatoes from their pewter plates, and pewter at that time often contained lead. Acid from tomatoes leached lead from the dishes, and people really got sick. But they blamed tomatoes, not the plates. So, Jefferson in 1781 starts growing tomatoes at Monticello. Publicly. Openly. He serves them at dinner parties. Eats them himself. This was an act of civil disobedience. He was literally saying, "Look, I eat them every day, and I feel perfectly fine. Your fears are ignorance." But here's what's really striking. He didn't grow one tomato variety. At least 14 different varieties. Spanish, Italian, French. He tested their taste, size, resistance to Virginia's climate. Now at the supermarket you'll find 2, maximum 3 tomato varieties. All bred not for taste, for transportation. They must withstand thousands of miles of travel, sit on shelves for weeks. Taste is secondary. Jefferson grew tomatoes for taste. Not for logistics. Not for profit. For pure pleasure of eating. And by the way, some of his varieties still exist today. For example, Spanish tomato large, meaty variety he brought from Europe. Or Jefferson's yellow tomato with delicate, sweet flavor. You can buy these seeds today and grow exactly the same tomato that the third U.S. president ate. But tomatoes are just the beginning. Next vegetable Jefferson called luxury of kings. And he wasn't exaggerating. Asparagus. In the 18th century in Europe this was food exclusively for the rich. Common people never even tasted it. Why? Because asparagus is finicky. It grows slowly 3 years from planting to first harvest. It requires knowledge, patience, proper soil. Jefferson creates an asparagus bed at Monticello in the early 1780s. And you know what? That bed worked for more than 200 years. Asparagus is a perennial plant. If you do everything right once, it'll feed you and your grandchildren. Jefferson understood what most people still don't understand. Asparagus is an investment. You don't plant it for yourself today. You plant it for yourself in 5 years, in 10, in 20. It's a long game strategy. Today a bunch of asparagus at the store costs $4 to $6. One season that's 10 to 15 bunches from one bed. Multiply by 20 to 30 years. That's thousands of dollars of harvest from one planting. But 99% of people don't plant asparagus. Why? Takes too long to wait. 3 years until harvest. No thanks. People want results immediately. Jefferson thought in generations, not quarters. He understood that real value is in long-term perspective. In what you create for the future. Asparagus is about patience. But the next vegetable is about obsession. 330 varieties of peas. Read that again. 330 varieties of peas. Jefferson tested each one. Recorded when planted, when sprouted, when flowered, when harvested, what the taste was. 70 pages of his journals are devoted exclusively to peas. He even held annual competitions with neighbors. Who would harvest peas first in the season? Winner invited everyone to dinner where main dish was naturally peas. This was more than a hobby. This was passion. But why peas specifically? What's so special about them? First, protein. Peas are plant protein that can be dried and stored for years. In times when meat was luxury for most, peas were accessible alternative. Second, agronomy. Peas enrich soil with nitrogen. This means that after peas any other crops grow better. Jefferson understood this long before science explained the mechanism of nitrogen fixation. Third, strategy. Peas are light, caloric, store well. Perfect food for an army. Jefferson was searching for ideal variety not just for his table for American farmers and military. Here's what's really striking. From 330 varieties he tested, he found 10 to 15 truly outstanding ones. And he shared this knowledge. Sent seeds to friends, neighbors, farmers across the country. Today at the supermarket you'll find 5 to 6 industrial pea varieties. That's it. From thousands of existing varieties we use a handful. Jefferson proved simple truth. Diversity is resilience. If one variety dies from disease or climate changes, 329 others will survive. We forgot this lesson. And we're paying for it. Now let's talk about plants Jefferson brought to America, risking his reputation. Artichokes. In Italy they'd been eaten for centuries. In America nobody knew them. Jefferson brings seeds, tries to grow in Virginia. Problem. Climate doesn't fit. Artichokes love mild winter and cool summer. Virginia is hot summer and cold winter. He tries once. Fails. Tries again. Fails. He doesn't give up. Tries 10 years in a row. Finally finds way to shelter plants for winter, and they survive. Broccoli. European vegetable that Americans first saw thanks to Jefferson. He grows it, serves it at dinners, explains to guests how to cook it. Today broccoli is one of most popular vegetables in US. But 200 years ago people didn't even know what it was. French end of chicory with white, crispy leaves. Delicacy that in Europe cost a fortune. Jefferson tries to acclimatize it in America. Partially works, partially doesn't. But here's what's important. He documented every failure. Every setback. Every mistake. Why? Because he understood. His records will help others. Someone in the future will read his journals and learn that artichokes don't grow in Virginia without shelter. That broccoli needs to be planted early spring. That chicory grows better in northern states. Jefferson risked his reputation, time and money for the sake of expanding food diversity. Not for himself, for the country. And yes, broccoli now is mundane. But once it was revolution. Now let's talk about what we've lost. See kale. One of Jefferson's favorite vegetables. Perennial plant that gives harvest in early spring when nothing else is growing yet. Taste something between asparagus and cabbage. Tender, delicate, with slight sweetness. Jefferson grew it for years. Recorded cultivation techniques. Shared seeds with friends. In the 19th century, sea kale was popular in America. It was grown in gardens, sold at markets. And now? Now almost nobody grows it in US. It disappeared from culture. Completely. You won't find it in supermarkets. Even at farmers' markets, rarity. Why? Because it doesn't fit industrial agriculture. It's perennial and industry loves annual crops that can be controlled. It's tender and industry needs vegetables to survive transportation. It requires time and industry demands speed. We lost the diversity Jefferson tried to preserve. From hundreds of vegetable varieties he tested, we today use 10 to 15. From thousands of plants that can be eaten, we chose 9 for supermarkets. This isn't progress. This is degradation of food system. Let's stop for a minute and think. What does all this mean? Jefferson wasn't just an enthusiastic gardener. He was revolutionary. His garden is political statement. Every planted seed said, America must feed itself. Without dependence. Without compromises. Vegetable diversity isn't aesthetics. It's nation's resilience. If one crop dies, others will survive. If one region suffers from drought, another region with different crops compensates losses. Now look at modernity. Jefferson 330p varieties. Modern supermarket 1 to 2 varieties of everything. Jefferson 14 tomato varieties. Supermarket 3, all tasteless. We return to food dependence that Jefferson tried to free us from. 90% of products in US are controlled by 5 corporations. We buy 9 types of vegetables, though thousands exist. We traded diversity for convenience. Taste for logistics. Independence for cheapness. What would Jefferson think seeing modern supermarket? Seeing rows of identical tasteless tomatoes. Seeing that all diversity he fought for 38 years disappeared for corporate profit. I think he'd be furious. But here's good news. You can change something. Jefferson spent 38 years documenting plants. You can spend 1 season growing at least one of his varieties. 1 tomato. 1 pea variety. 1 asparagus bed. Monticello Foundation organization that preserves Jefferson's legacy sells seeds from his collection. Real, historic varieties. The very ones he grew 200 years ago. You can buy them online and plant at your place. Imagine. You bite into tomato that third US president ate. You taste peas he tested in his competitions with neighbors. This isn't just food. This is living history. Plant 1 vegetable from his garden and you'll become part of tradition that's bigger than gardening. You'll become part of fight for food independence that Jefferson started 2 centuries ago. In 1826, few days before his passing, Jefferson wrote last entry in Garden Journal. He recorded pea harvest. Not political thoughts. Not philosophical reflections. Peas. Because he understood. As long as people can feed themselves, grow diverse food, save seeds, they are free. Truly free. Write in comments. Which Jefferson vegetable will you plant first? And if you want more stories about forgotten plants and lost food diversity, let me know. I'll keep digging. Thanks for watching. See you in next video.